Hello, I'm Cheryl Hawkins. Welcome to Solutions, the show that highlights the incredible work that nonprofits do every day to find solutions to help solve problems in our communities. On this edition of Solutions, we focus on the Montgomery County affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, commonly known as NAMI. The organization works to educate, support, advocate, listen, and lead to improve the lives of people with mental illness and their loved ones. Let's take a look at some of the work of NAMI.
Each year, 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness, and 17% of youth ages 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder.
I joined NAMI because I have 2 sons that live with a mental illness, and I didn't want any other families to feel alone like I did.
At NAMI, the first thing we want anyone to know is you are not alone in your mental health journey.
I just really want to talk about so people know that you don't have to go through it alone.
NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental illness. We started as 2 moms, gathered around a kitchen table in 1979. And today, we are an alliance of more than 600 local affiliates and 48 state organizations who work in your community to raise awareness, build advocacy, and provide support and education. NAMI envisions a world where all people affected by mental illness live healthy, fulfilling lives supported by a community that cares. Every year we are expanding, no matter race, religion, age, or sexual identity. We are people with lived experience, families and loved ones, survivors and advocates, and together, we will fight the stigma surrounding mental health and create a better world for the sake of all of us. We have resources for you and can't wait to become an extension of your family. We are here for a healthier world. We are here for better mental health. We are here for each other. Join us.
And now, joining me in studio is Stephanie Rosen, Executive Director of NAMI Montgomery County. Stephanie, welcome to Solutions.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for coming. The work you all do addresses major concern in our communities, and so I think we have to start by talking about exactly what it is. So let's talk about mental illness. The term, it has such a negative stigma, and when people mention it, others seem to run away from it. So tell me, how does NAMI define mental illness, and how prevalent is it?
Mental illnesses are a set of varied conditions that can affect the way a person thinks, feels, relates to their outside environment. It can also affect mood and behavior. The most important thing to know about mental illnesses is, if you think you might have one or have one, is that you're not alone. They are a lot more common than people think. 1 in 5 adults in the United States lives with a mental illness in any given year. And mental illness is, like I said, it's a big umbrella of a lot of different disorders. They're kind of separated into anxiety disorders, mood disorders, personality disorders, and should really be diagnosed by a professional, mental health care professional or a physician.
So what are some symptoms of mental illness, and how do we recognize them?
So one of the things I like to share with people is we don't expect the public to be able to diagnose mental illness. You should just know if there's changes in behavior, changes in mood, feelings of hopelessness, changes in eating behaviors, overwhelming anxiety is another symptom. Anything that might be affecting the person's ability to live their daily life, to relate to their friends and family. If that is impacted, that's a really good sign that you should seek out a professional. And you should see your primary care doctor. There are somatic or body illnesses that can mimic mental illness. You need a full checkup in order to see what might be going on.
That's really good to know. I'm sure, I know most of us have had some situations in our lives that affected us emotionally in some kind of way, which may not be mental illness, but you're saying if it's prolonged and things like that, then we should check it out.
If what you've normally relied on to help you cope, to help you be resilient isn't working, then yes, get help, because a lot of people living with mental health conditions, myself included, can live really fantastic lives, can, live the social and professional and personal life that they want to live and accomplish the goals that they want to.
And I want to add here too that a lot of times people that are dealing with mental illness don't look like it.
No, it is a hidden illness.
Yeah.
You can't see what trauma someone may have been through, or what battles they're fighting on the inside. And that is, and no one illness looks the same from person to person too. Two people can have the diagnosis of depression, have two separate constellations of symptoms. So what makes mental illness extremely difficult and sometimes scary is that there is no quick test. There's no blood test, there's no x-ray. It's different from person to person. It can look different over the course of the person's lifetime. Different treatments may be necessary at different times in that person's life. And so it's complicated, and that makes it a little bit scary. But the truth is, it's very common, very treatable, and most people live really amazing lives with their mental illness.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about NAMI. I think it was founded in 1978. What do you do?
Sure.
Who do you serve?
So NAMI Montgomery County was founded, as you said, in 1978. It predates me. And that's really amazing. I'm so proud to be a part of this legacy. It was started by 5 local families who had loved ones with very serious mental illness, and they realized that there was a lack of knowledge around what their loved one was going through, a lack of support for themselves as caregivers, and so they came together to provide each other that support and then to spread education and awareness to the community. And that peer support component is what's really foundational to NAMI. Mm-hmm. That's our space in the mental health field. We provide peer support for caregivers, for loved ones, because oftentimes if the loved one's getting professional treatment, the family still has a significant role in that person's recovery, but they don't have somewhere to go to get help and how to be that support. So that's where NAMI comes in. And then we also, in the 1990s, rolled out programming that was directed towards the individual living with mental illness. Peer support, as research has found, is so important in the role of recovery and living with good mental health.
And so who do you serve? Because I don't think it's young people, but you serve a different, a particular audience.
Yeah, so we serve adults, and that's because we are the peer support model. We would love to find a way to have kids help other kids, but without a professional in the room, we just don't think that that's really the right approach. Mm-hmm. So that's why we're limited to adults. We have amazing volunteers. All of our volunteers have lived experience. So they themselves live with a mental health condition, or they have a loved one who lives with a mental health condition. They teach our classes, they lead our support groups, they give our presentations, and they share their personal journeys and their personal stories as a way to help others in their journey.
Great. So tell me about you. How did you come to NAMI? Have you always worked in the nonprofit sector?
So my professional career is a nice zigzag path. I came to NAMI because I was a program participant. Okay. I have a loved one who lives with bipolar disorder. I have always been interested in science, medicine, public health. I thought this is a really interesting space to be in because you don't have to be a professional and you can still make an impact. Mm-hmm. So I took the class and then really realized, okay, it's not just my loved one that lives with a mental illness. I have a mental illness. I'd lived with depression for about 8 years, but for some reason had never really accepted that, oh, that is a real mental illness, and I do struggle, and I do need to forgive myself and understand it wasn't my fault, my family's fault. This is an illness like any other. So Family to Family really gave me a lot, and I decided to teach it. I taught it for a year. Then NAMI needed a part-time family program coordinator. I said, me, please.
Wow, okay.
Applied and got the position. And then our executive director left, and there was this position. So I became executive director in September of 2013.
Wow, that's fantastic. So did you have experience as an executive director anywhere else, or was it a learn on the job kind of thing?
It was a very learn on the job kind of thing. You know, we were talking earlier about nonprofits that support nonprofits, and that was really such a lifeline. You know, you're not alone when it comes to running a nonprofit. You get the title executive director, but it is such a group effort. Yeah. Here's your board of directors, your volunteers, your staff, your donors. Yeah. I mean, there's so many stakeholders in a nonprofit, and they're really all supporting you and helping you work towards that goal. Mm-hmm. So my background was actually in science and medicine. I started medical school. I did 2 years of it until my depression was just, it was unbearable. I couldn't finish medical school with it.
Medical school is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not the only one struggling with a mental health condition.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had done clinical research. I had done preclinical research, all in neurology, just kind of my path, and then started school for public health, and NAMI fits really beautifully in with the public health.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah.
I'm like, you have the background for it. So NAMI is a national organization. What's the relationship between the local office and the national organization?
So as our name suggests, we are an alliance. So we all, you know, we work together. There's 3 different tiers of NAMI, or levels. There's the national level, which is based in Arlington, Virginia, really local to us. It's nice to have that resource. There's also state NAMIs. I think all 50 states have a NAMI at this point. If not, then we're very close to having all 50 with a state. And then we have local affiliates. There are about 650 NAMIs in total.
Wow.
And so we are all independent 501c3s, meaning that, you know, we all have our own board of directors, we all have our own bylaws, but we are an alliance, meaning that we are very much in line when it comes to policy and advocacy, where our programming comes from our national office and is facilitated through our state office. So we really do speak with one voice, even though we're 650 separate nonprofits.
Yeah, so does each of these individual nonprofits have to get approval from the national organization to form?
So there is an accreditation process. You know, they want to make sure that there's certain standards that are met. Our national office is going through a really exciting change right now, where they're looking at how do we focus more on impact in the field versus compliance in the field. So I think that's a really, really beautiful change that the national is focusing on. But yeah, they want to make sure that you're adhering to certain guidelines, and that's important, because you want the name to have meaning. You want the name to be recognizable as the same, offering the same kind of support.
Right. You talked about the volunteers. What about your staff? What kind of staff? How large is your staff?
So we have 6 staff members, including myself.
Okay.
It is a small but mighty team.
Typical nonprofit.
Yeah. And when I started, it was really just 1 full-time staff member and a few part-time staff members. So we've grown to be able to sustain having 6 full-time professional staff. And the work that we do is very much in coordinating, recruiting, training, retaining, problem solving with our volunteers. Our volunteers are the heart of our organization, because they lead all of our support groups. They lead all of our classes. They're the ones standing on stage sharing their stories.
And they also become donors, I understand.
Yes, they do. They do. The other major component that we couldn't live without are, of course, our donors.
Yes.
We have really fantastic people in the community who are so supportive of our mission, who've taken our programs and our programs have changed their lives, and so they want to be more involved, or they just know that this is an issue that they're extremely passionate about.
Great, we'll talk more about that in a minute. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back with my guest, Stephanie Rosen, Executive Director of NAMI Montgomery County. Stay with us, we'll be right back with more solutions.
You may not realize it, but these words, often used to describe someone with a mental health condition, can be very harmful. In a country where 1 in 5 people are affected by a mental health condition, it's time for all of us to step up and change the conversation. Just because someone's struggle isn't obvious on the outside doesn't mean they aren't hurting on the inside. We need to see the person, not the condition. Join with me, pledge to be stigma-free.
I'm here with Stephanie Rosen, Executive Director of NAMI, National Alliance of Mental Illness, Montgomery County affiliate. So Stephanie, I want to talk more specifically about some of the programs that you offer at NAMI, but first, coming back from the break, we saw some footage of your recent walk. We call it Walkathon, which is your largest annual fundraising. Tell me a little bit about when does it happen and who usually participates?
Yeah, so our walk is every spring. We just had it this past May 20th. That's about the time May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so it's a really great time for us to, pick up on that momentum, to have a public event where any member of our community, and we have so many different, it's all ages, all different backgrounds, all different stories are coming together to say mental health matters. And people form teams to celebrate the life of someone they've lost, or to just celebrate the journey that someone has had and how proud they are of where they've come. So it's a really beautiful, it was a really amazing event, and we have about 400 people that come out.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's got a really celebratory feeling too, because we're celebrating that people are getting help and that people are talking about and sharing their story. It takes such strength to share your most vulnerable components of your life.
How many years have you been doing the walk?
So we've been doing the walk for, I believe, 4 years. Yeah. And it's part of our national organization. It's a NAMI Walks program, and they have walks in the fall and walks in the spring. We take part in the spring walks.
Okay. And is it done at the same place? Have you been doing it at the same?
We do it at the Rio in Gaithersburg, or I think it's technically Rockville.
Right.
But it's a really beautiful space because they have a stage. free parking, lots of parking, and then walking around the lake is absolutely beautiful. If you do go 4 times around the lake, it is a 5K.
Oh, really?
But we don't require that you go 4 times around the lake.
I've never been there, and so it sounds beautiful. I'm
It
gonna have
is.
to go check it out.
It is. There's a really great playground for kids. My daughter loves the carousel there.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about some of the support groups you have. You have the NAMI Connection Recovery Support Group, the Family Support Group. Talk about those and any others.
Yeah, so all of our programs are provided free of charge to anyone who wants to participate. The support groups, we do require pre-registration, and so you can find that on our website. But we split up the support groups depending on if you're there as a caregiver and you have concerns about someone else, or if you're there because of your own journey and you have your own diagnosis that you want to talk about. A lot of times people are both. You can be both a caregiver and live with a mental health condition, but it depends on what is it that you're seeking support and help for. That determines which kind of support group you join. And we did just launch last night. We had our first BIPOC support group for Black, Indigenous, and persons of color. And so we're really excited to be providing that specific resource, because we do know that different communities struggle with different aspects of mental health, and stigma is everywhere and looks different in different communities.
Yes. So in the group, what happens? You talk, you share, and do you realize you're not alone?
Yes. So yes, realizing you're not alone is one of the major outcomes that people comment on. It's a safe space. It's a grounding space too. It's a space where you can learn from other people to say, this is what helped me, or here's this resource that you may not have heard about, or here's what I do at work when I'm faced with that kind of situation. There is a lot of group wisdom. There's also, it's a space where everybody understands what you're going through. So they're not going to judge you, if you say my big celebration is I took a shower. Because for someone that can be a really major accomplishment if they're facing serious mental illness. Yeah. And so it's this really safe space where, you're with like-minded individuals who are there and care about your well-being.
And how often does a group come together?
We have all different kinds of groups. Through all of our programs, we have about 3,000 touch points a year, and the majority of those are through support groups. Some of our groups meet weekly, some of our groups meet monthly. It's really all on our website.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. Now you have what's called principles of support and guidelines for the support groups. You've got 12 of them, 12 principles of support and 7 group guidelines. We're not going to talk about all of them. We'll put them on the screen so our viewers can see them, but I'm curious to talk about a couple of principles. Number 1, we will see the individual first, not the illness. I think that is
it's really
good.
Core to what NAMI is all about. You are a person living with a mental health condition. You are not your mental illness. And just like with any disorder, you wouldn't define someone by the cancer that they face or the diabetes they live with. That is just a piece of their story. Just like mental health conditions are a component of that person's story. They may be a very important component.
Right.
They may be, but it doesn't always have to be struggle and strife. There's a lot of resiliency and really beautiful things people have learned because of living with a mental health condition.
Yeah.
And ways that they've been able to help our community through that. So we're very person first. See the person, not the illness.
And then number 7, we won't judge anyone's pain as less than our own. Talk a little bit more about that. That touched me when I read it.
Yeah, it's everybody has their own journey. We don't divide our support groups up by diagnosis because we find that people have more in common than they don't. And as we talked about, this is invisible. It may be visible in some ways, if you do have certain symptoms, but most of the time it's pretty invisible. And so you really can't you really can't judge the amount of pain that someone else is in. Also, there's a very wide spectrum of disorders and varying degrees of severity within those different disorders. And it's really each person's journey, and we're there to support them in their journey and to acknowledge and validate any pain that they may be going through, and to help them with figuring out how to make the next day a little more bearable.
Right. So we're hearing more and more in the news about the growing rate of suicides in our communities. What areas are you, NAMI, seeing growth in terms of crises and mental health illnesses in the community?
Well, I think COVID was kind of the biggest collective factor that's impacted our world's mental health in recent history. The isolation, the fear, the anxiety, the unknown. You know, it today feels great, you know, but it was not that long ago that our lives really fundamentally shifted.
Totally.
Yeah. And so we do also know that after traumatic events, there hasn't been a world pandemic, but after, you know, natural disasters, we do know that the mental health crisis that follows typically lasts longer and goes on much longer than the actual event. So we're going to be seeing, as a community, we're going to be seeing the effects of COVID, what it has on our community's mental health for a long time. And so I think our youth have been particularly affected. They had all of their structure changed. You know, my sister's a teacher. She teaches 3rd grade. This is the first year those kids have had a full year of in-person school. And so I think we really need to, as a community, invest more in our provider pipeline. We have a shortage of providers. I think we need to be encouraging more people to go into this field, encouraging parity when it comes to insurance, making sure that our mental health is just as covered as our physical, somatic health. And so, yeah, there's a lot of work to be done in this area. First, awareness, acceptance, and then fixing the process so that there are as few hurdles as possible for people to get to treatment. And then even in the area of treatment, there's a lot of research that needs to be done. We don't have a cure for any of our mental illnesses, but we do have effective treatments and need to continue to support research to find more effective treatments, if not cures.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this out here because it came to my mind. Technology is great, but sometimes it can be detrimental, and I'm talking about social media. Have you seen that become a problem for people with mental illness?
Yes, absolutely. I feel conflicted about our own organization using social media platforms to promote our message. Because yes, we are promoting something healthy and it's for well-being, but it is using a platform that we know can cause anxiety and stress and poor mental health. So, you know, I think the testimony that the whistleblower gave in front of Congress about Facebook, that was extremely enlightening to me. There has been research on this done. I personally don't use social media. I found years ago that it was not good for my mental health. But it's really up to the individual to decide. And then, you know, I really worry about our young people.
Yeah, I've even reduced, you know, the amount of time I spend on it because wow. And who knows what the next change will be. Right. Who knows what the next thing that'll come along. But there are so many ways that it can be used for good too. I don't want to ignore that. You know, there are really fantastic people to follow and people sharing their journey in really inspiring ways on social media. Okay, we're just about out of time, but I know you have a resource helpline. We'll give that information to the viewers. But tell me a little bit about the 988 Crisis Lifeline that was developed. It's a national number. Why was that developed?
So 988 launched July of 2022 nationally. It was based on federal legislation and then rolled out a little bit differently in every state. But there was funding from the federal level to help that process along. We want mental health crises to be treated as mental health crises. They should be treated like, you know, when you call 911, there should be an ambulance if you're facing a health crisis. If you call 988 and you're in mental health crisis, you should get the appropriate resources. And that means a mental health care professional or a team involving a mental health care professional. And so it's really encouraging when it comes to, you know, crisis is just one component of mental health. There's prevention and there's treatment, and then, but really critically important, that one of the basic things we need to get right is crisis intervention. And we need to decouple the criminal justice system from mental health. Mental illness is not a crime.
Thank you, Stephanie, so much. The work you're doing with NAMI, the whole organization, is so needed in our communities, and I say thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank my guest, Stephanie Rosen, Executive Director of National Alliance on Mental Illness, Montgomery County, for being on the show and sharing solutions that help improve the lives of people in our communities dealing with mental health illnesses. If you think you need help, you can call the NAMI Montgomery Resource Helpline at 301-949-5852. If you are experiencing a crisis, you can call any of the other numbers listed on the screen. And if you'd like to support the work of NAMI MC, then visit their website at namimc.org or email them at info@namimc.org. I'm Cheryl Hawkins. Thanks for watching, and see you next time for more Solutions.